Well, hello everybody and welcome to Jeff's Baking Blog. Now today I'm going to be making some mini cinnamon rolls. So they're going to be made in a mini muffin tin and with a bread dough, cinnamon laid on it and then rolled up like the cinnamon swirl buns. And these are going to be in the mini muffin tin, so sort of 1 or 2 bites per roll, I think. Quite straightforward to make, but they do take a little bit of time because the dough has to prove and such like. So we'll go on to the ingredients. For the dough, I have 168 grams of softened butter, and in my bowl here, so 168 grams works out at 12 tablespoons, and in my bowl I have 11 of those tablespoons, about 150 grams, 154 grams, and I have 1 tablespoon, 14 grams set to one side for spreading later. Then I have 2.5 cups of flour, and that works out at 315 grams. That's plain flour or all-purpose flour. I have 50 grams, which is 1/4 cup of caster sugar, or granulated sugar would be okay. I have 2 medium egg yolks, that would be large in the USA. I have 80 millilitres or 1/3 cup of milk. I have 7 grams, 2¼ ounces of active dry yeast, that's 1 packet of active dried yeast. I have 60 millilitres, 1/4 cup of water, which I've heated to about 43 Celsius, 110 Fahrenheit, so lukewarm. And that's all the ingredients that we need for the dough. For the cinnamon filling, I have 1 tablespoon of ground cinnamon. I have 3/4 cup, 150 grams of soft brown sugar, and as I said, my 1 tablespoon, 14 grams of butter. First thing to do is to tip our yeast into our warm water, and I'm actually going to put about a teaspoon, or half a teaspoon will be enough, of sugar in with that, and I'm going to mix it around, and I'm going to leave that to stand for about 10 minutes until it starts to go fluffy, until it starts to go frothy. Our yeast mixture is frothing up nicely, so what I'm going to do is put my sugar into the bowl with the butter, and I'm going to whisk that and get it all nice and combined. And then I'm going to add the salt in and the milk. Now I forgot to say I've put a teaspoon of white vinegar into this milk, which will curdle it slightly. And to give a bit of extra flavour, but you won't actually taste it as vinegar in the mixture. And I'm also going to add in, I'll mix that round first. And then I will add in the egg yolks, one at a time, and mix those in. And then I'll add the yeast mixture, and this all looks curdled, but don't worry, it will all come together when the flour goes in. So I'll scrape down the yeast mixture to get it all in, and mix that round as well, and then we'll start to add the flour. We'll add the flour. What I'm going to do is just add a couple of tablespoons of flour, maybe 3 to start with. I mix that with my whisk, and then I'm going to change to my dough hook and mix the rest. That's good, that's brought that together quite nicely. So I'm going to put my dough hook on and add the rest of the flour. And I'm going to knead this on a medium speed, starting slow but building up to medium, and I'm going to knead it, scraping down the bowl if necessary, until the dough comes away from the sides and leaves the bowl quite clean. It should take about 5 minutes. So the dough has been kneaded quite nicely, and it's come away from the sides. Now I added 2 tablespoons more flour. If it doesn't seem to be coming away from the sides as it needs, then you can add a little bit more flour, because flour tends to absorb liquids at different degrees or different levels, depending on the humidity, and so sometimes you need to add a little bit more. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put that out onto my work surface with a little bit of flour. And I'm simply going to turn that over and form it into a ball. Now this is a very rich dough, so the proving time may be longer than for normal bread dough. But I'm going to put this into a greased bowl, and I'm going to cover it and prove it until it doubles in size. Now it's quite warm in here today, so it may not take too long, but it could take up to 4 hours because it's so rich. But I think this will probably take no more than 2 hours. So I'm going to put that in top side down and then turn it over. And I'm simply going to cover that and leave it to prove until it has doubled in size, and then I'll come back and we'll go on to make our mini rolls. The dough has proved for just under 2 hours, and because it's very warm in here, it has doubled in size already. So what I'm going to do is tip that out onto a very lightly floured surface, and I'm just going to shape that into a log, knocking the air out. And the reason for that is I want to cut this into about 4 equal pieces, because I only have one 12-hole mini muffin tin, so I'm going to do this in 4 stages. I'm actually going to check the weight when I've cut them. So I'm going to cut this in half. And because I'm only going to work with 1/4 of the dough, I'm going to wrap the rest up in plastic wrap, and I'm going to chill it in the fridge because I don't want it to rise anymore while I'm working with the 1/4. So I'm going to lightly flour the work surface again, and what I want to do is to roll this out so that it's about 12 inches long and 4 inches wide. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little bit of that tablespoon of butter which I had left over of the original 12, and just smear it over the dough. And then I'm going to take about 1/4 of my sugar, and I'm going to put that on to the dough. And I'm going to spread it out, and I'm going to leave one edge uncovered from sugar and cinnamon. because that will be the seal that I need. So I'll just pat that down, and then I'm going to take about 3/4 of a teaspoon or so of the cinnamon, and I'm going to sprinkle it over. Like that. And then take one edge and roll it up, and I'm not going to roll it excessively tightly because it might then force the middle out more than we want, but I'll roll it up and seal it with the edge that has nothing on it. Like that. And I'm going to pinch all along the seam to seal that. And then I'm going to cut this into 12 pieces. Like that, and simply pick them up and put them into the tin, and then I'm going to cover them and leave them for about 20 to 25 minutes while I heat my oven to 180 Celsius, that's 160 Celsius with a fan, 350 Fahrenheit. And then they'll be ready to go into the oven to bake. The oven is now preheated, and our mini muffins have rested. This one's a little bit too large, I think, and this one's a bit too small, but it doesn't matter. So I'm going to put these into the oven, and I'm going to bake them for between 15 and 20 minutes until they've got a nice golden colour. And then I'll take them out and bake the rest, and then I'll come back and we'll make a very basic icing sugar icing just to drizzle over the top. So I'll be back with you when these have baked and cooled down. Our cinnamon rolls are out of the oven and they've cooled down. As you can see, some are slightly larger than the others, but that's fine. So what I have here is 30 grams, which is a couple of heaped tablespoons of icing sugar, and into that I'm going to put maybe 2 teaspoons of water. You could use lemon juice, you could use milk. I'm just going to mix this together to form an icing which will run off the spoon. You don't have to ice these if you don't want to, but I think I want to just do that. I'm just going to put a little drop more in, because I don't want to put too much on the spoon. I just want, rather than try to pipe it, which is the waste of a piping bag for this amount. This is just for the 12 that have cooled down. I'll do more later. So that's good enough. So then what I'm going to do is take a little bit of the icing and I'm just going to drizzle it onto the buns. So that's the buns, and what I'm going to do is have a little taste of a small one, or a smaller one. That's very nice. Got the cinnamon and the sweetness of the sugar and the icing, in fact. So that's very, very tasty. Takes a little bit of time to make because you have to prove the dough. You could actually do these if you wanted to buy shop bought puff pastry or croissant dough or crescent dough, and lay that flat and make sure the seams, if it's crescent dough, are all joined together, and then you can cover those with sugar and roll them up, sugar and cinnamon, and roll them up and bake. Cut those into small pieces and bake those as many rolls if you want to. So that's going to be it for this recipe. If you've enjoyed it, please give me the thumbs up below the video and click to subscribe to my YouTube channel. In the top right hand corner of the screen there will be an eye that you can click on, which will take you to this recipe, and I'll also put a link to it below the video, and I'll be back with you with another recipe in the very near future. So until then, happy baking.